So, hi everyone who might be watching this, besides my teacher, Miss Caro. Hi, Miss Caro. So this is gonna be not my review, but my vlog, I guess, about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, I'm gonna do them by chapters, and I'm gonna start with chapters 1 to 4. Actually, I think it might be more like 0 to 4. I'm gonna just paint that in. Why not? Because it has this chapter before you start reading chapter 1 that it's kind of an introduction. It's very short, like other chapters, but it just says it starts telling about life in Earth and how the human is unhappy, and I have here my book, and how someone actually came up with the idea to be happy and to stuff like that, but she died before she could tell anybody else. But it's not her story that they're telling, it's a story about that accident that cost her life, or most likely that we're gonna know about later, the whole planet's life. So for these chapters, it cost me a little bit to actually read and go beyond chapter 3, for the reason that, I don't know, I didn't understand anything at this point. I kept trying to read it, but it just cost me trouble because I couldn't understand what was happening. But I have read ahead, so this is why I'm gonna be speaking in past tense about this part of the story, because I'm already very much forward. But they're talking about this house and how it's Arthur's house. So I'm gonna start writing the characters here. So we have Arthur, which so far has been our main character. I don't know if you can read that. So far has been kind of like our main character, and we have that apparently they're tearing his house down, they're destroying it, I'm gonna be saying that, because they are making a highway, I think it was. I don't remember if it was a highway or something like that, but it was a road that was gonna, as he says, it makes people from point A go faster to point B, and people from point B go faster to point A. But he just doesn't understand how much the people from both points want to go so fast to the other point. So he's just pissed that they're tearing his house down, like you would be if they were just we're tearing it down. So we have Arthur, and in the same first episode we get introduced to Ford. I know he has another name, but I'm just gonna refer to him as Ford because it's easier to remember. So we have Ford, and from the beginning you get this understanding that he's not from Earth. He's not from around here. Or the same thing as they are not going, they're not trying to be sneaky about it. They just tell it to you. And you can see how, well, they describe it that he always looks up at the sky, and every time someone asks him, hey, what are you looking at? He's like, I'm looking for flying saucers. And he's being actually serious, because later you find out why he's not from here and why he's looking for something. And then we get this interaction between Arthur and Ford that it's very weird, because we have Mr. Prosser, which I'm not going to write because he's not even, he's relevant for 2 chapters, I believe. So we have Mr. Prosser, who's the guy who is in charge of the whole destroying Arthur's house down. So we get Ford coming to Arthur and telling him, hey, I need to tell you something, it's really important, so can we, but you need alcohol. It's a key. So can we go for the pub? But Arthur is like, no, I'm not leaving, because he goes out and he stays in front of his house as a protest of you cannot tear it down. So he's like, I cannot leave. If I leave, they're gonna tear my house down. But then Ford does this really weird thing where he convinces Mr. Prosser to take Arthur's place in protest and for them to not tear his house down while they go. That's very weird. And then we get the second chapter, which we go right to the Encyclopedia Galactica, which is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it starts describing alcohol and stuff like that. It goes into this random entry, but not random, because it actually talks about alcohol, and both Arthur and Ford are going to the pub to drink it. So it just is about a drink that you can make. But again, it's for me it's difficult to read it because you have all this like words that don't mean anything at this point. Like it says Pangalactic Gargo Blaster, you know? So it's like you are not supposed to understand it, I know, but it's still like it causes me so much distress reading that and not knowing. So then we go back to Ford, and like he's not being like he keeps telling people that the world is gonna end in 12 minutes, and he's not being secretive about it. Like he's telling the whole pub about it. He's telling the bartender, he's telling the people besides him, and obviously people are not gonna believe him. Like we have learned from everybody that if a nutcase comes and be like, oh, the world is gonna end, everybody's gonna be like, yeah, sure, cool. Like nobody's gonna believe you, but because we know who Ford is and how he is not from around here, like we know that he's being serious. So that is the whole second chapter, and then we go to the third chapter, which goes into a whole thing about, I think it's the explanation about the world ending. It's like there's ships that are outside of Earth that are still not visible, and like Ford knew that they were there because he has I think it was called like sensomatic, yeah, sensomatic, that kept like blinking, so he knew this was gonna happen. So he knew the world was gonna end, but they had to get out of there. So it was on a Thursday. That's like fun fact because it's not important the day it was. And then it goes back to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it explains how a towel is one of the most important things a hitchhiker can have. Like, because you can use it as a blanket, as a mattress, and like, if you have a towel, other people or a strag is a non-hitchhiker, will believe that you have more stuff with you, because if you have a towel, it's like, oh, you have more stuff, so they will give you stuff like, oh, hey, can you give me like some spare cookies? And like they're gonna give it to you because he's like, if he has a towel, he must have more stuff. He just lost it, or he ran out of cookies. So like, yeah, because if not, you would look like a homeless, and I don't know, or like you don't have anything, so that makes it for people not to give you stuff. I don't know, like it has a good point. And then it comes back to the pub and how they keep talking about how the world is gonna end in 12 minutes and stuff like that, and like the bartender is trying to like understand why he's saying this, and because he's starting to like actually listen to what Ford is saying and trying to believe what he's saying. And then they start tearing Arthur's house down because he's not there to stop them. So Arthur notices, he goes outside and he's like, you barbarians, why, stop it, and like, you know, he's planning of like beating someone up because his house is being turned down. And then we have the world is gonna end, like the ships come into the earth and people are seeing them, like obviously, like in the movies, people are gonna freak out because like spaceships, everybody loves space and like it's freaked out about aliens. And then there seemed to be like a message telling the people of Earth that they will be building a hyperspatial express route through your star system. So the Earth is in the way, so what's the solution? Destroy the whole planet. So they're gonna destroy Earth, and obviously people are freaking out because obviously that. I'm like, it's funny. When I read it, I actually laughed out loud because the fact that Arthur was just about to get his house destroyed because of it, like because of the same reason, and how it was like so important, and now the whole planet is going to be destroyed for the same reason, which just, I don't know, I found it very funny. And then we go to chapter 4, which by this point I was still lost. Like now that I think about it back, like I now understand it. I didn't know how I struggled that much, but we go to chapter 4 where we go about this whole, like we are in another part of the universe. So we have the galaxy and we are introduced to Sapod Beeblebrox. I'm gonna just I'm not even gonna bother with his last name, it's too difficult. But we get to know that he's like this amazing, extraordinary man that like is a lot of stuff and stuff like that, and he has been the president of the galaxy for some time. And then they have like this, I don't know how they call them. But you know, when there's an asterisk and then there's a definition or something like that in the bottom. So like this, there's a asterisk, and then this is like this whole explanation that just doesn't make sense because you don't understand any of the terms or what is happening, but you still read it, and we're like, yeah, even if you don't understand it. And then he's about to present to like the whole people this heart of gold, which when I first read it, I didn't understand what it was. I was like, is it a planet? Is it an island? Is it a building? I don't know. I was very confused what the heart of gold is. But there's this whole thing about him and like how extraordinary he was, being the president of the galaxy, stuff like that. And then we get to know Trillian. That was a girl that Sapot had picked up recently while visiting a planet. Later we find out which planet. But in the beginning I thought it was like his daughter, like he adopted her, but then it turned out to be a whole different thing. But we will get to that later. And then he sees a heart of gold, and it's like he's being transmitted to many people. He's like, oh, it's beautiful, it's amazing, and stuff like that. And then he goes into this whole thing of taking out like a sap bomb or like a stung bomb, and then he uses it, and apparently he steals a heart of gold, which that's the next chapter. But so far, until chapter 4, I'm not going to give my predictions because I already read ahead, but at this point, I remember when I read it, I was just hoping for things to make sense, because I have a friend that's also reading it, and I was like, I'm not understanding anything, and she was just like, have patience, you will understand everything in a couple of chapters. So I was just hoping that everything could be explained and that I could understand what is happening, and it did happen. And so far, like, I'm liking the book. Like, at this point I was liking it. I was just struggling with it because it has been a long while since I've read something like this. So it was an interesting experience, and I still really like it. I'm hoping that it will get better because they have told me it's a good book, and like the comedy part of it is very funny, and I'm really liking it. So I just hope that I understand it more, and that it keeps surprising me with the whole like ending of the world and the galaxy and stuff like that, you know. So that is the first part. Goodbye.